So if you're watching this right now, chances are you're either facing separation or divorce and you're a mess. Can't sleep. You're replaying every conversation in your head. Meanwhile, your wife, she's calm. She's cold. Maybe even smiling. It's confusing, right? You're wondering, how can she act like this like it doesn't hurt? Today, we're going to break down why your wife can act fine during separation and what it really means underneath the mask. And I'm going to tell you this up front. What's happening isn't cold hearted or cruel, it's a form of self protection. But before we dive in this video, if it hits close to home, if you're tired of walking on eggshells and you just want a clear plan to rebuild trust and get your wife to soften again, I want you to book a free call with me and my team. We'll walk you through exactly how men are turning things around fast without begging, chasing, or giving her space, right? That link's below. Don't wait. You don't fix this by guessing. Okay. You know what throws most men off during separation? It's not the paperwork. It's not even sleeping alone for the first time. It's watching his wife act like she's totally fine when she's falling apart. She's smiling at work, posting on social media, maybe even laughing with friends. And he's sitting there thinking, how can she do that? Does she care? Was any of it real? But here's the hard truth, brother. Men and women process pain in completely different ways. See, as men, we usually feel the pain after the hit, after the argument, after she moves out, after the reality finally punches us in the chest. That's when we want to fix it. We start analyzing, planning, asking, how do I get her back? But for her, the process started a long time ago. By the time she says, I'm done, she's already cried her tears quietly, alone, for months, or usually even years. She began grieving in secret while you were just living your normal life. She tried to talk, she dropped the hints, she hoped you'd notice, and nothing changed. So she started to shut down emotionally, not to punish you, but to protect herself. So when you can see her act calm, indifferent, maybe even cheerful, what you're actually seeing is emotional self-defense. Her nervous system is saying, I can't take another heartbreak. I need to stay numb to survive. It's not indifference, it's exhaustion. It's self-preservation. One of my clients, we'll call him Mike, told me something that broke his heart. A week after his wife said she wanted a separation, he saw her at a restaurant laughing with friends. He said, man, it was like watching a stranger. How can she be happy when I'm dying inside? What Mike didn't know back then was that his wife had already spent 6 months crying alone in their car before coming inside after work. She already mourned the marriage. She already begged God for something to change. So by the time she told him she was leaving, she wasn't fine. She was just empty. She had no tears left to give, and that's the part most men miss. When she seems calm, it's not because she stopped caring, it's because she ran out of emotional oxygen. So here's an easy way to picture it. Imagine two runners on a long track. You're still standing at the starting line, stretching, thinking the race hasn't even begun, but she's already been running for miles, carrying the weight of emotional pain, disappointment, and loneliness on her back. By the time you realize what's happening and start running after her, she's already crossed the finish line. She's not celebrating, she collapsed, she's exhausted, and she's out of breath. So when she says, I can't do this anymore, it's not sudden, it's the final lap of a race she's been running alone. So let's talk about something that most men never realized. And honestly, it's the thing that keeps them stuck for years. It's what I call the victim trap. You'll see it all over the internet, in Facebook groups, comment sections, podcasts, you name it, probably at the bottom of this video. Men posting things like, she never loved me, women are heartless, they show their true colors after marriage. And listen, I get it. When your world is falling apart, you want a reason. You want something that makes the pain make sense. But here's the problem. When you live in that mindset, you give away your power, and we don't want to do that. A victim mindset says, she did this to me. A leader's mindset says, what can I learn from this? What did I miss? How can I rebuild differently? See the difference? When you play the victim, you stay stuck in blame. When you step into leadership, you step into action. And that's where your power comes back. Because every single man who saved his marriage, not one, not 10 times, but hundreds of men, they did it the same way. He stopped waiting for his wife to change and he started changing the environment she was reacting to. That's the first thing we talk about in the heroic husband. That's how trust rebuilds. That's how attraction comes back. That's how leadership gets restored. So let me tell you about a man named Chris. When Chris first joined our program, he spent months posting a line about how cold his wife had become. Every night he'd scroll through divorce forums, comment on things, and say stuff like, "Women don't want good men anymore. She left me after everything I did for her." He wore his pain like a badge of honor. But what he couldn't see was that the more he complained, the more powerless he felt. One day, during one of our coaching calls, I asked him, "Chris, when was the last time your wife felt safe around you?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I don't think she has, at least not in years." That hit him hard. He realized that for so long he'd been focused on what she wasn't doing, that he completely ignored the environment he created. One, where she couldn't relax or open up or trust that her emotions were safe. So he stopped talking about her online. He started working on himself offline. He started to listen without defending, slowed his tone. He showed calm leadership when she tested him, and within weeks, she noticed. Her voice softened. She started texting him about small things again. She laughed at his jokes, and slowly, that wall that she began to build up began to crack. When you stop blaming, you take control of the only thing you can control, your presence. You can't control her emotions. You can't control her timing. You can absolutely control the energy you bring into the interaction. Victims say, "I'm waiting for her to see my worth." Leaders say, "I'll show her my worth through calm, consistent action." So let's talk about something that's quietly wrecking men's ability to lead at home. It's what I call the victim culture or the emotional victim culture. And it's everywhere right now, especially online. Scroll through social media for 5 minutes and you'll see it. Guys posting endless videos, comments, and memes about women today are broken, how marriage is a trap, how you can't win as a man anymore. And listen, those posts feel good in the moment. They make you feel seen. They give you someone to blame. But here's the problem. That mindset keeps you powerless. See, emotional victim culture happens when your pain stops being an experience and starts becoming your identity. It's when being hurt becomes who you are instead of something you move through. You start wearing that wound like a badge. You replay the betrayal, the argument, the rejection over and over because it makes you feel justified. But you know what it doesn't do? It doesn't help you heal. And it definitely doesn't make her feel safe again. Because here's the truth. Victims can't lead. And you can't rebuild a relationship if you're stuck in resentment. You can't rebuild trust if every word out of your mouth is dipped in bitterness. When you stay in that space, your energy becomes unsafe. She doesn't see calm, grounded leadership anymore. She sees a storm she needs to escape. So let me give you an example. I had a man reach out to me a while back. We'll call him Dan. Dan told me his wife had been distant for months. She said she needed space, and he said, "Fine, do whatever you want." But secretly, he was spiraling. He went nights scrolling online, leaving angry comments on relationship videos. Every post, every comment was the same tone. "She used me. Women only care about money. Marriage is just a scam for men to lose everything." He was drowning in bitterness, convincing himself that being hurt was his identity. When I finally spoke with him, I said, "Dan, you talk like a man who's been hurt, but you also talk like a man who's given up leading." That landed hard. He realized he built a new identity, the betrayed husband. And every time he replayed that story, he stayed stuck there. So we shifted the question. Instead of "Why did she do this to me?" he started asking, "How did I help create an environment where she stopped feeling safe?" That one shift changed everything. He stopped posting. He started journaling. He started leading his life again, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And within a few weeks, she noticed. Her guard dropped. She started texting again. And for the first time in a long time, they had a calm conversation that didn't end in a fight because she could finally feel his energy shift from victim to leader. The reason why victim culture is so dangerous is because it tricks you into thinking complaining equals progress. It gives you sympathy, but steals your self-respect. And the longer you stay there, the more your mind starts to believe the lie. I'm broken. I can't win. I've already lost. That's when bitterness sets in. That's when hope dies. And that's when your wife, if she ever was going to come back, completely shuts off emotionally. Because what she feels from you isn't leadership anymore. It's resentment disguised as righteousness. So instead of ranting about how unfair things are, ask yourself 2 questions. 1, how did I contribute to the breakdown? And 2, what am I willing to rebuild differently this time? Because that's what a leader does. He doesn't live in blame. He lives in responsibility. That's the man she can eventually trust again. That's the man your kids can look up to. That's the man who can walk into any storm and lead with strength instead of fear. So here's a metaphor that hits this point just a little harder. Victim culture is like quicksand. At first, it feels soft, comfortable even. It gives you somewhere to sink into when you're tired of fighting. But the longer you stay there, the harder it is to move. And the more you struggle, the deeper you sink. The only way out isn't to fight harder, it's to reach for something solid. That solid ground is responsibility. That's where the real strength lives. Okay, it's easy to assume your wife is cold because she doesn't care anymore. But what's really going on in her head isn't coldness at all. It's exhaustion from what I call the hope and disappointment loop. So here's how the loop works. You make promise of change, she gets hopeful, then something slips, disappointment hits. That happens once, twice, 10 times, and eventually it kills her ability to feel safe. She's not angry because she stopped caring. She's distant because she's protecting herself from another round of hope that turns into pain. It's not that she doesn't want to believe you. It's that she can't afford to anymore. Her brain literally starts to associate your promises with pain. So the moment you say, I'll do better, she doesn't feel comfort. She feels anxiety. Because every time she trusted those words before, she ended up more disappointed than before. That's why she feels robotic. It's not heartlessness. It's heartbreak on repeat. I remember one client telling me, she's like a robot now, man. I can't get a single emotion out of her. But what he didn't see was that for years, his wife had been giving him signals. Small ones, but consistent. Every time she said, you don't listen, he'd defend himself. Every time she said, that tone hurts, he'd justify it. Every time she opened up, he'd brush it off or try to fix it instead of feeling it with her. And little by little, she stopped trying. She wasn't heartless, she was heart-weary. She had tried to believe, tried to connect, tried to be heard. But her hope had been burned so many times, it stopped showing up. And when hope dies, emotion dies with it. Here's what most men don't realize. A woman doesn't shut down overnight. It's not one big moment that kills a connection. It's death by 1,000 cuts, by 1,000 tiny disappointments. It's when her trust bank runs dry. Each promise you broke wasn't just an event. It was a withdrawal from the trust account. Once that bank balance hits 0, she goes into emotional bankruptcy. At that point, she's not reacting, she's retreating. She's trying to protect herself from overdrawing again. That's why you can't talk her back into the marriage. You have to show her safety over time. Small, consistent deposits that prove you're different this time. Here's a way to picture it. Imagine your wife walking across a glass bridge, and every time she takes a step forward, she's testing whether it'll hold. The first few cracks, she's cautious. You patch it up with words. You promise it's fixed. She steps again, crack. You promise again, crack. Eventually, she stops walking altogether. Not because she doesn't want to cross, but because she's terrified the next step will send her falling through. Now here's the twist. You can't yell from the other side to convince her it's safe. You have to walk back across the bridge, rebuild it from her side, and let her see you reinforce it one board at a time. That's what rebuilding trust looks like. Not words, not apologies, evidence. Here's something a lot of men don't realize. Leaving isn't easy for her. No matter how calm, confident, or fine she seems on the outside, it's never as simple as walking away. Because when a woman decides to leave, she's not just leaving you, she's leaving an entire life she built around you. Think about what she's losing when she walks out that door. She's losing years of history and memories, the late nights you stayed up dreaming about the future, The inside jokes, the family holidays, the photos on the wall. She's losing the family she built, not just you, but the rhythm, the routine, the sense of home. She's losing her financial stability. Even if she's successful, she's still terrified of what starting over looks like. She's losing her identity as a wife and a mother. For years, she has been us. And now she has to figure out who she is without that. And maybe the hardest of all, she's losing the dream she had for her future. The vision she carried since she was young, that she built a life with one man who would protect her heart. She's not just leaving you. She's leaving the version of herself that believed this would last forever. See, there's a war happening inside of her, a war between fear and freedom. Part of her wants to stay to hope that something could still change. The other part whispers, you've tried everything and staying is killing you. So when you see her acting fine, understand this. That's not confidence. That's armor. That's a woman who's learned to hide her pain so she doesn't fall apart in public. Leaving a marriage for a woman isn't like walking out of a house. It's like cutting off her own arm to escape a burning one. She doesn't do it because she wants to. She does it because the pain of staying finally outweighs the fear of leaving. So when you see her acting fine, when she's smiling at work or chatting with friends, understand that smile isn't joy, it's a mask. It's her way of saying, if I fall apart right now, I won't be able to survive this. So don't fall for the lie that she's fine. She's not fine. She's functioning. And if you can start seeing her that way, not as an enemy, not as a villain, but as a woman fighting a war she doesn't want to be in, you'll start to show up differently. Not desperate, not defensive, but calm, grounded, safe. That's what she's been waiting to feel again, safety in your presence. Because once she feels that, she'll stop fighting against you and start remembering why she even fought for you in the first place. Okay, so here's something most men never see coming. Relationships don't die because of problems. They die because there's no safety to talk about those problems. So there's, it's called a catch-22. Okay, and here's how it plays out. She feels trapped. She thinks to herself, if I speak up, I lose. If I stay quiet, I lose. If she shares what's wrong, you get defensive. You explain, justify, and tell her she's overreacting. But if she stays silent, nothing changes. And resentment builds because resentment's when you hold in all that energy. So no matter what she does, she loses. And eventually the only option left that she feels safe is to leave. Not because she stopped loving you, but because staying started to feel hopeless. That's when she emotionally shuts down. She's not done. She doesn't yell. She doesn't argue. She just goes quiet. And the silence is what kills connection faster than any fight ever could. One of my clients told me something powerful once. He said, man, my wife used to fight with me all the time. I thought that was a problem. But now that she doesn't argue at all, it's 10 times worse. And he was right. When a woman is still arguing, she's still trying. She's still emotionally invested. But when she goes silent, that's not peace. That's surrender. In his case, every time she'd bring up something that bothered her, like feeling unseen, unheard, or unappreciated, he turned it into a debate. He'd say, that's not true. You're exaggerating. You don't understand how hard I'm working. What he didn't realize was that every one of those logical explanations was slowly eroding her emotional safety. So after a while, she stopped bringing things up. And when a woman stops talking, it's not because there's nothing to say. It's because she no longer believes you'll listen. Here's why this is so destructive and why so many men miss it. When she finally builds up the courage to share her truth, she already is afraid of your reaction. So if you get defensive, dismissive, or angry, it confirms her worst fear. I can't be honest and still be safe. Now she's caught between two losing options: speaking up and getting punished for it, or staying silent and keep suffering. That's the catch-22 that destroys the emotional connection. Once she hits that point, it's not the argument that hurts her anymore. It's the loneliness of knowing her voice doesn't matter. And that's when her emotionality shuts down. Now, you'll notice in kind of subtle ways. She doesn't reach out first. She doesn't share about her day. She starts using fewer words. And when she does talk, everything feels polite. It's not love anymore. It's logistics, schedules, bills, kids, just surface level stuff. That's when men usually panic and ask, why is she so cold? But the truth is, she's not cold. She's done trying to be warm in a place that feels unsafe. So here's a way to picture this. Imagine your wife is inside a glass box. Every time she tries to speak, her words hit the glass and bounce back. You can see her mouth moving, but you can't really hear her. You tap the glass, frustrated. Why won't you just talk to me? And she's thinking, I have. You just never really listened or heard me. So she sits down inside the box, quiet, still, detached. You start yelling louder, but it doesn't matter anymore because the glass between you isn't soundproof. It's just trustproof. And until that trust is rebuilt, no amount of words will get through. If you recognize this pattern in your marriage, here's what you can do right now. When she talks, don't explain, reflect. When she's upset, don't fix, listen. When she's quiet, don't pressure, invite. Because the moment she feels safe to speak, the glass starts to crack. That's when connection begins to rebuild. That's when her emotions start to thaw. And that's when she starts looking at you, not as a source of her pain, but as a source of her safety again. So, what do you do now? How do you reach a woman who's emotionally gone, who says she doesn't love you anymore, but still sleeps under the same roof? How do you turn that cold silence into real connection again? Here's where you start. Step one is you got to fix your mindset. Your marriage won't change until you do. Every man who's turned things around inside the heroic husband method started by realizing this. You can't lead her heart while living in a victim mindset. You have to drop the why is this happening to me and replace it with what can I learn? What can I do differently? What can I lead through this? That's leadership. That's masculine calm. That's the beginning of change. Because the moment you shift your mindset from reaction to responsibility, you stop feeding chaos and start creating stability. That's what she's starving for. Step two is step into her shoes. Next, you got to stop asking, why is she doing this to me? And start asking, what would it feel like to be her right now? That one question changes everything. So imagine how heavy it feels to wake up next to a man who's there physically but emotionally checked out. Imagine trying to talk about your pain, but feeling like every word gets turned into an argument. Imagine carrying that weight for years until numbness feels safer than hope. When you can see her experience without defending yours, you instantly become a man she can trust again. Because empathy isn't weakness, it's strength under control. And step number three is see her resistance as feedback, not rejection. That's huge. When she's cold, distant, most men take it personally. They panic, they chase or shut down. But her resistance isn't rejection, it's feedback. It's her way of saying, I don't trust you. I've seen this movie before, and I don't know if I believe the ending. So instead of proving yourself with more words, prove with consistency. Show her calm instead of chaos. Show her follow through instead of frustration. Show her stability when she expects you to break. Because trust isn't rebuilt by promising change. It's rebuilt by embodying it. Step 4 is rebuild through the 4 core principles of the heroic husband. Once your mindset is grounded, it's time to rebuild the foundation, the 4 pillars that make your marriage unshakable. 1 is emotional safety. This is the heartbeat of her attraction and trust. It's when she feels you can speak freely without being dismissed or corrected or judged. When she knows you can hold space for her emotions without losing control of your own. 2 would be the tribe of trust. You can't do this alone, okay? You need to build a back and forth tribe with her. She needs to not only feel like she is not going to be in pain speaking with you emotionally, but that you do not reject her and alienate her anymore. You have to make sure you build up that back and forth conversation so she doesn't feel rejected or alienated. Step number 3 is the Renaissance man. This is where you step back into masculine edge, not just as a husband, but as a man. You start leading in your health, your mission, and your purpose. You become attractive again, not by chasing her, but by elevating yourself. When you rise, everything in your life starts to rise with you. And step 4 would be the emotional bonding process. This is where connection reignites. When she feels safe and starts to trust your process again, you rebuild emotional and physical intimacy naturally, not by forcing closeness, but by earning it through choice, not obligation, not force, choice. When these pillars are strong, your relationship becomes nearly bulletproof because attraction allows trust and trust follows safety. Here's a metaphor that sums this up perfectly. Imagine your marriage is like a stormy sea. The waves are violent, visibility is low, and your wife's out there, terrified, trying to steer her ship through the chaos. Now imagine you, the husband, trying to chase her in another boat, shouting directions over the wind. You're yelling, she can't hear you, and both of you are just getting tossed around. That's what most men do. They chase, they argue, they panic, but the heroic husband doesn't chase. He becomes the lighthouse. He stands firm. He lights the way home. He doesn't yell or plead. He shines steadily, consistently, until she decides that's where safety is. That's the power of calm, grounded leadership. That's what brings her back. Not force, not logic, but consistent safety. So when your wife acts like she's fine, remember, her coldness is her armor. It's not hate, it's not punishment, it's self-preservation. She's saying, I can't afford to hope again unless it's real this time. And that's where your calm consistency matters more than words. If you're ready to learn exactly how to rebuild safety, trust, and desire step by step, then it's time to book a free call with me and my team. We'll walk you through the heroic husband method, the same system that's helped hundreds of men reignite their marriages, even when she said it's too late. So don't wait for another week of silence. Don't hope this blows over. Take action today. Your wife's not fine. She's waiting to see if you'll finally lead. You've got one shot to show her the man she can trust again. Make it count.